Now, I've been asked quite a bit recently about webinars, taking part in webinars, hosting webinars, leading webinars. So let me give a few very simple ideas and advice. The first thing is you must be interested in what you're talking about. Remember this from Harry and Meghan's royal wedding? Bishop Curry looking interested and interesting, and the guy at the back looking disinterested and unengaged. If we're not interested in what we're saying, what's being talked about, then our audience certainly won't be. And I have sat through some awful webinars, looking at them, trying to learn from them. And one of the biggest issues is people just not being interested, particularly when somebody else is talking. Makes a huge difference. Remember what we talked about earlier? Joe Wicks saying you need to be you, but a slightly enhanced version of you on a really good day. So that's the kind of idea we need to have in our mind. Second thing is slides. A lot of people say to me, we need more slides in a webinar. And I say, well, maybe or maybe not, because often the format is picture, slide, and then 3 or 4 people talking down the side. It doesn't have to be. Sometimes it's just people talking or one slide. But let's imagine those sort of scenarios and somebody pops up this slide. All you're going to do is read it, which means you're not listening to the discussion. So keep the slide really simple, and better still is actually an image or something that you talk about and enhance the slide. In the video on PowerPoints, we talked about keeping words to a minimum, and it still applies in the webinar world. What you can do, of course, is send additional information afterwards, which means you get a bonus. Your viewers will be engaged because they're wanting to continue to explore what you've talked about, and you reconnect with them. So think about that rather than trying to bombard people with information on the actual slide. Next thing is the real world skills still matter. People forget this, but they still matter. Remember how engaging it is when we do the fish or the Michelle? If we get the framing right on our webinar image, whether it's on Zoom or Teams, we can still bring the fish or the Michelle into play and look engaged, because it makes a huge difference. The other thing about webinars is somebody needs to be in control. Now, my suggestion generally is that the person leading it is in control. That person then brings in the other contributors and tries to keep an eye on other people for when they want to make a contribution as well. And that depends how many you've got. So you may switch off the sound. You may even switch off the camera for your contributors if necessary. But I advocate generally, keep the camera on and you invite people to contribute when you need to. It makes it more interactive, makes it more interesting. But if you're using the chat function, keep that to a minimum, because otherwise you're looking down and reading it, which means you're not concentrating on your audience. And one other final little thing. The camera, when you're doing a webinar, is like a visual Michelle. At the moment, I'm delivering this to camera, to you. But if you actually spend just a few seconds looking directly to the camera when you're presenting in a webinar, with warmth, with engagement, maybe with a fish as well, it feels incredibly personal and powerful and dynamic. So in terms of webinars, there's some very basic ideas. And my suggestion, always do things in 30 seconds. My suggestion is just practice as we started out these videos, talking for 30 seconds with warmth and engagement, but within that little box that people can see on Zoom or Teams, and make sure in those 30 seconds you maximize your engagement.